Welcome to the Cosmic Love Antenna Podcast. This podcast is meant to encourage you to connect within so you can share your light with the world. And now, here's your host, Harrison Ma.
Welcome, beautiful souls, to another episode here of the Cosmic Love Antenna. I am your host, Harrison, as always. And today, as always, I am tuning into myself, and I'm looking forward to this episode in many ways because it's a new style that I'm going to continue doing in the future. And if you watched episode number 1, in that discussion, in that episode, I talked about how I want a big part of these chats, these episodes, to be me educating you, to be a platform for me to help you go deeper into yourself, to ignite that powerful cosmic love antenna in all of the beautiful ways that you deserve to open and expand into. And today is a special bonus episode where you just have me, you have beautiful old me, and some of the elements that I want to teach today. And the theme of this episode, the theme of this bonus episode, is the chakra system, or the energetic system inside of us. And I'm interested and I'm excited for this chat and this topic, because if you've listened to my voice before, you've heard me in other spaces and places trying to teach and give love, you've most likely heard me talk about the chakra system. If you go to the emblem of this podcast in your player that you're looking at right now, you'll see at the very top of the profile picture of the podcast, you see these little symbols, and each of those symbols are the different energetic chakras inside of us. So today, I'm going to go into them. I'm going to go into them for a couple of reasons. The first reason that I want, and the reason why I sort of leaned into this episode today here with you, is to help you connect. Surprise, surprise, to help you connect to a deeper sense of what you actually are. And I see the chakra system as a way to do that. I was having a chat with my powerful father, and he has told me that he has started listening to this podcast. I'm excited. And Dad, if you're listening, I love you very much. Thank you for tuning in. And I thought of him when putting the outline of this episode together and everything I want to talk about the chakra system, because I want this episode and this style of bonus episode to be very, as if you're a beginner, right? Be very simple to understand. And more importantly, why? Why are we doing these kinds of topics? Why am I emphasizing the chakra system? So that's really the intention of this space. This discussion is to make a very simple go-to guide around the chakra system. Another reason why I want to discuss this specific framework is that I feel that the chakras are a gateway to help us connect into our holistic being. In Eastern philosophies, traditional Chinese medicine, the chakras were seen as a reservoir of emotion and energetic power inside of us. There are also the bridge between the emotional, the energetic, and sometimes spiritual elements of us and the physical. That's a very important point to realize here today, is that these chakras can be the way in which you connect sometimes the confusing and very nuanced emotional being that you are to your physical pain, your physical challenges, and more importantly, your physical healing. I see the chakras as the space and place you can go to when you feel like you've done everything. When you feel like you've done and implemented all of the modalities, you've gone to see all the doctors, you've changed your diet, you've moved your body, you've slept in, but still something is not shifting, something is not moving, something that you deserve to heal from. You're not making any leeway. You're not making any progress. The chakra system, in my opinion, my experience, is the solution to that. The chakra system is also a way for you to connect into your self-love, your intuition, your higher self, right? Remember the theme of the Cosmic Love Antenna is to help you connect within so you can share your love and light with the world. And the chakra system is a powerful way that you can do that. So this is why I wanted to bring you this episode. This is what we're going to get into today. I'm already feeling this is probably going to be 2 parts. So today I'm going to start with the first probably 3 or 4 chakras. There are 7 main ones, right, that we're going to hit on. And we'll just flow with it. And what I'll do is throughout this chat, I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between energetic and emotional themes and symptoms, and also physical themes and symptoms and how they connect together. And I want you to have this in the back of your mind. This is for you to learn, right? To be aware of these things throughout your day, right? This is just another tool in your medicine bag or another tool in your toolbox now that you can implement when you feel like things aren't changing. Okay, so let's get into it. And I'm excited to go on this chat with you. So as I said, there are 7 main chakra centers. And the first one, well, let me back up a little bit. There are 7 main centers, and they each have a physical location in the body, right? So the first one, which I'm going to start here in a second on, the root center is where your legs meet, just below your genital area. The perineum in the male body, the end of your tailbone, that's the area of your root. Your sacral, which is the second, is just above your genitals, below your belly button. Your solar plexus is above your belly button in that upper stomach area. Your heart is where your heart is, in that middle of the chest. The throat is on that throat center. The third eye is on between your two eyebrows, and the crown is the top of your crown. Okay, I say these because there are physical locations, and I want you to tune into these as we're moving through them. Okay, tune into them and get some idea of their physical sensation, their physical manifestation, their physical area of resonance within your system. Because if you can start making this physical connection, you can connect the energetic and emotional elements of them. Okay. So going back, the first chakra we're going to hit on is the root center. And this chakra, this energy center, it has many themes. But where I like to start explaining this to people is through the themes of safety, security, and support. These are things that we ideally want to give ourselves, but due to how we evolve and how we grow, remember, we have developmental stages as we develop from a baby into an adolescent into an adult. And our chakra system develops alongside that age progression. And the root center is the first one to develop. And those themes of safety, security, and support, they are usually given to us by who? By our parents, by our family, by our tribe. I'm saying these words very intentionally here. So this is an area where if you are having challenges, if the root center is unstable, that needs some awareness to take steps in your healing journey, start here. Where are you not getting security, safety, and support? Where in your childhood, for example, did some kind of trauma occur? Did some kind of event occur? Did some kind of interaction with your family members create an instability in this security, this safety, and this support that you deserve to have met? The next element within the root, and it's a whole thing in itself, but it's your physical needs, your physical structure, your physical body. One of the physical representations of the root is the bones, the ligaments, the muscles, the joints that add to our physical structure. So let me give you an example. If you are finding you have challenges in this root center, right? Let's say the hip. Let's use the hip as an example. And you have chronic hip pain. You have chronic hip injuries. You have chronic hip inflammation. You've done the food, right? You've seen the doctor. You've analyzed it from maybe a psychotherapeutical perspective, but you're not prioritizing your physical body. Maybe you're neglecting self-care and self-love. Maybe you're putting the whole entire world first, and then you're coming home late in the evening and forgetting to feed yourself, forgetting to look after your body, forgetting to rest and get good sleep. This is the theme of the root center. You're not embracing and loving and making time for your physical needs. If I finish this topic right here on the root, I'm not, and I'll keep going, but if I finished it just with that alone, that's so important in itself. How are you giving yourself the physical structure, support, and safety that you deserve so you can be the loving light for the world? Let's keep moving here. Birth trauma. So again, this is a whole other topic I might do in the future about, and might bring someone on with. But if you remember, this first chakra is developed in that's first 0 to 7 years. But notice I said 0. If you've had some kind of traumatic experience, either in the hospital, either as your mother was carrying you, some sort of element around this is going to show up in the root, right? Because it goes into that time area, that time frame. Are you in a chronic fight or flight response? Again, this is a physiological representation of the root now. So there's a reason that if you look at all of the chakra centers, they are on or associated with hormonal glands. This is not a coincidence. It's because the hormones are the bridge, are the gateway. If you heard the conversation I had with Dr. Taggy, we talked about this. The hormones are the gateway between the energetic, emotional, and spiritual to the physical. That's why the chakra system, the chakras are on or very near hormonal glands. The adrenals play a role in this area. So if you have an imbalanced root center, there's also a high likelihood that you have a chronic and overworked adrenal gland, putting you into fight or flight, right? This is where too much in a sympathetic state, again, that fight or flight, too much activated in the doing, in the working, in the chronically sort of over processing, and not in that parasympathetic state of resting and digesting. So that's a symptom and a connection I would bring into the root center, that fight or flight response. I'm going to come back to that hip area because I think it's a very obvious physiological structural place that we can bring awareness to make these links. Each of these chakras, as they move forward, they have a feminine and a masculine representation. The left side of the body is the feminine, the right side is the masculine, and the chakras correspond to these. The right side is the masculine. Your right hip is your right root masculine energy. What did I say at the start with the overdoing and the overworking? That is a masculine. Remember, when I say masculine, I'm talking about the divine feminine, divine masculine that is in each body. It doesn't matter your sex, right? We both have, whether we're male or female, we have masculine and feminine energy within inside of us. So if we're looking at the right hip and we're overly working, overly doing, not resting, right? This shows up in the right side, right? That's why we often have a right hip challenge, and you can connect it to overdoing, overworking, not resting, not prioritizing self-care, self-love, etc. Right? So that's a big one here. The last element I'm going to hit on in the root, and then we'll move on to our next chakra, is wanting to belong. Remember, I said at the start, the theme of the root is connection, support, safety, and tribal security. So if we have suddenly, let's use the example over the last 2 years of COVID, and let's say that COVID created the environment in which you suddenly lost your job, or suddenly were disconnected from your family, or you suddenly were put into isolation. How do you think this is going to impact that root center, right? That tribal association, that sense of belonging. It's going to interrupt it, right? It's going to put it off balance. So if you're listening to this and you've been noticing some adrenal challenges, you've been noticing some hip challenges, you've been noticing some of that lower area, that root challenge with its physiological representations, look at these stressful events. How can you heal those, right? How can you, and this brings in some of the remedies here, right? How can you give yourself that safety and support? How can you give yourself that sense of belonging? The last thing, I know I said this, that was the last thing, but I really want this to hammer home for people. While these are symptoms that you can notice, realize that you have the answers to them. Right? So if we've lost a sense of belonging, if we've lost a sense of safety, a sense of security, sense of support, then how can we give that back to ourselves? I talked about the self-love and the self-care. Another way you can do that is through connecting to your inner mother. Like we have an inner child, we have an inner father and an inner mother. So connect into your inner parent and reparent yourself. Give yourself that sense of safety. Help yourself feel connected and feel like you belong back in your own body again. I'll end it there and we'll move on to the next chakra because I want to make sure I want to be balanced here, and I could talk about all of these centers just by themselves, but I want to give you a sort of holistic and integrated perspective here. So I don't want you to get stuck in one because they all work together. And I'll re-emphasize that towards the end. But just keep that in mind as we keep flowing. The next chakra is chakra number 2. And this is your sacral center. This is above the genitals now, below that belly button area. And now we're moving to the age frame 7 to 14 is roughly, I believe that's the frame of the sacral. There are different views on this, but general consensus, 7, 14 in that age frame. And this area is probably one of my favorite areas to talk about just because it's so deep. Like I said, that each chakra has a masculine and feminine representation. You could summarize as you're looking upwards. So if you're looking from the left and the right side, each chakra has a masculine and feminine. But if you're looking upwards, then each chakra has an energetic overall trend. The root is yang, and now the sacral is yin. Right? So yang is moving out, yin is receiving. And the yin it's connected to our feelings. It's where our emotional body, our representation of how our physical, how the human being that we are starts to dance and understand the feelings and emotions that are moving through it. It is our creative center. It is our creation energy. Let me be very clear for each and every one of you. We are all creative beings, and the sacral center is where that creation energy is ignited, whether that be creation of health, creation of family, children, creation of actual artistic expression. These are all representations of your creation energy that comes from that sacral center. The area in your life in which can impact this sacral center, one of the areas, I'm going to get to a couple here, but the first one I would look at is sexuality, sexual expression, sexual identity, sexual growth. If we've moved through some kind of sexual trauma as a child, maybe in that 7 to 14 age frame, then this is severely going to impact this center, this sacral center. Remember that in the future, I'm going to do another one of these bonus sessions on the inner child specifically, and the inner child as an abstract mental archetype spends a lot of its time in the sacral center. But one of the inner child needs that we have growing up is sexual expression, a healthy sexual expression. Note the emphasis there. If we've had childhood trauma around sexuality, remember someone forcing themselves on us, for example, that is unhealthy sexual growth. If we watch pornography excessively, that is unhealthy sexual growth. If someone tells us that we don't deserve to be a sexual being, right? We don't deserve to touch ourselves. We don't deserve to express our innate sexual curiosity. Then that is the other end, the opposite end of not being able to express our sexual desires. That is now suppressing our natural instincts of sexual energy. So all of these elements can impact the sacral center. If you've experienced these things and you're also having infertility challenges, you're having erection challenges in the male body, you suffer from PCOS, right? You have fibroids. I want to be very clear here. I'm not saying that sexual trauma is the only component within something like infertility or PCOS. What I am saying is that it must be considered as part of the root healing of it. Hope that lands. That's very clear, right? And it comes from this sacral center. If I was told, let's say, I'm going to give an example here, and I want to be very loving and very open and accepting. Wherever you are with your religious beliefs, I love where you're at. However, I can probably maybe share this from what I saw growing up and maybe people around me. I know in a lot of religious denominations that sexual pleasure, sexual touching, sexual expression is not looked very highly on. So if you are in such environment and when you were told not to connect into this innate energy that's inside of you, now you're suppressing. Now you're not allowing that energy to flow. And remember, energy is not destroyed. So this urge isn't going to just disappear. It's going to show up in some other way. Let's keep moving here because this, as you can tell, this area, the sacral center, is a deep one for a lot of people. I want to come back to the other side of it I was talking about, our relationship with our feelings and emotions. Guilt and shame are big, big, big emotions that can store themselves in this area. Remember, emotions what are emotions? Emotions are energy in motion, and they deserve, there's no such thing as a good or a bad emotion. Emotions deserve to be expressed and flowed through us. If we feel guilt and shame for whatever reason, and remember, I define guilt as I did something bad. I define shame as I am bad. If these elements, if these emotions are ignited, and again, for whatever reason, we weren't able to regulate these, to process these, to let them up and out, they're going to store in the sacral center. They're going to become repressed. They're going to hold on. They're going to weigh heavy. I give an example, right? I could feel guilty and shameful for pleasuring myself. I could feel guilty and shameful for, let's say that I'm a homosexual. Let's say that my sexual identity, right? I'm attracted to the same sex, right? That's my beautiful expression. Let's say I'm a female, right? And I'm attracted to the same sex. That's your beautiful identity. But let's say the external world doesn't see it the same way. And now they're projecting onto you guilt and shame around that innate, deserved expression. And you don't acknowledge that. You don't allow that to move. You allow their power to control you. You allow their views to control you. Well, now that guilt and shame is going to repress itself, especially if you don't speak up, especially if you don't stand in your power and lean into your beautiful truth of what you deserve to express in this world. your sexual identity being just one of many things, right? So I'll leave it there with that one. But the sacral, I really just want to encourage everyone listening around these ideas of creation and sexuality and feelings and emotions, at least developing them to begin with, are liberating here if you can lean into them. I'll give one more little example of a physiological symptom and a way that we can heal from it. Look at, Candida or SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, small intestinal fungal overgrowth. These are in that lower gut area. If you've experienced some of this guilt and shame and you haven't processed it, and you're also having these symptoms of these lower gut challenges, again, I'm not saying they're the only element. There, of course, you need to consider what you're putting in your mouth, how you're feeding your system, how you're recovering, how you're moving. But if you're not considering the guilt and shame and the sexual elements and the creative elements, then you're missing out on a big part of this. And you need to let go. You need to release. I'll give one final little tip here around the sacral, around the chakras in general, but the sacral specifically. If we want to release guilt and shame, speaking it through your powerful throat chakra is one way to do it. Right? So instead of ignoring the guilt and the shame, instead of pretending it's not there, acknowledge it and let it go. So if you're holding guilt around your sexual expression, right? I feel guilty for being in love with men. I feel guilty for being in love with women, as an example. Then release it. Say the thing I hold guilt and shame around is being in love with women. The thing I hold guilt and shame around is being in love with men. And let it go. Speak it out. Feel it, emote it, and release it. Hope that helps. Hope that makes it very clear. Let's move on. And as expected, we're already 30 minutes in. So I think what I'll do here is let's do one more. Let's do one more chakra. And then I'll make this a part 1 and a part 2. So the next chakra center is another good one, another big one. They're all good. They're all big. And this is why I love talking about this topic, because there are so many little pathways and nuances that make this so interesting. And again, I just want to highlight, as you've been listening thus far, look at these things in your life. What is resonating? Yeah, probably not all of it's going to resonate, and that's totally fine. But notice how your body is responding to the words that I'm saying. If there is something that really clicks and you're like, I don't even know why, but that clicks, that makes sense, then follow that thread. Okay, and that is going to be a step in the right direction for you. So the next chakra is the solar plexus. This is right above your belly button. It's above the sacral, but above the belly button, right below the rib cage area. It's that upper stomach area. The age frame, 14 to 21. This is the space and the place of your personal power. This is your identity. A lot of hate goes to the ego, especially in the spiritual world. But we forget that the solar plexus is where our identity, our self-esteem, the little self versus the big self, right? That this is where the little self is formed, our ego structure. This is where my Harrison-ness is constructed. What makes me unique, what makes me beautiful, and what makes me powerful. This is my self-will, my self-esteem. You get the idea. One way that this can be unbalanced in this area is we give our power away. So that our power is inside of us. It is not external. So when we give our power away to other people, that is what brings imbalance to this area. One of the things. I'm going to get into some others in a second, but the biggest thing here to start with the solar plexus for you to realize is solar plexus is your power. It's you. And let's use the example of, I'm sure we've all been in the situation where we've been in a conversation with someone and they've said something And then we've wanted to reply, but for whatever reason, maybe we thought they would look at us weirdly. Maybe they would yell at us, maybe whatever their reaction, we didn't say the thing. And then we felt something, we felt uncomfortable in our stomach. What are you doing here? Well, you're not listening to your truth, your power, what needs to be followed. You're giving your power away, right? Because you're allowing the external to control what you identify to be correct. Another example, I'm sure many people here over the last 2 years listening have experienced some kind of displacement due to some of the things that have been happening in the world. And you felt like maybe some of it was unjust, or some of it was wrong, or some of it was not aligned with your values, as my throat chakra, right, starts to bubble up. So I would notice how those actions made you feel. Did you feel a sinking in your stomach, right? When some of these rights or some of these freedoms in certain instances were infringed on, whether you think they were correct or not, that was coming into your personal power. How did you feel? Did you have more gut distress at that time? Remember, the gut, the physiological gut, is a representation of this energetic and emotional center. Another element of the solar plexus that I want to bring in here now is our relationship with anger. We know through traditional Chinese medicine that anger is created in the liver. The liver is in the stomach, in that area, and the liver is connected to the solar plexus. So anger, so moving on from shame and guilt from the sacral, anger is another big emotion that holds itself within the solar plexus region. And anger, remember what I said moments ago in the sacral, there's no such thing as a good or bad emotion. Anger gets a lot of bad rap. We see anger as negative. We see it as, oh, that person's being angry to that other person. That must mean I must suppress all anger. Incorrect. Anger has two imbalanced forms, either the suppression of it or the taking out of it on another person as rage. We forget that anger has a medium ground. If we express anger to channel our truth, just like I said, right, speaking your truth through your throat chakra, I'm going to get to the throat chakra next episode, but our truth is defined in the stomach, in the solar plexus. And often what allows us to speak that truth is anger, right? We see things happening in the world. It makes us feel angry. Then we speak confidently. We don't direct that anger as rage on another. We don't harm another person, but we use the anger to speak our powerful message and voice. That is healthy anger. If you can do that, that brings balance to the solar plexus. But if you suppress the anger, if you felt angry because of something did at work, or you feel angry because someone said something to you, or you feel angry because someone, you can see all the examples here, and you don't express that anger, you don't channel that anger, then it's not going to disappear. Emotion is energy in motion. And when we don't allow that energy to flow in the way that it wants to flow, it's going to get our attention another way. And one of the ways is through the body, right? Through the gut, through the leaky gut, through the gut distress, you get the idea. I want to add one more little element here to the solar plexus before we wrap this up. And I haven't been going too deeply into it, but I did mention it very briefly, the masculine and the feminine sides of the chakras. And the solar plexus, like the rest of them, has these two sides. The right side, again, testing you here, what is it? It's the masculine side. But what I want to add to this now is not only do these right and left sides of our chakras represent our masculine and our feminine, they also represent, from an ancestral perspective, our mother line and our father line. So the right side, the masculine, our father line, the left side, the feminine, our mother line. So what am I getting at here? You might be realizing that you have anger challenges moving through you in that solar plexus area. But let's say you've also diagnosed that it's not your anger. You're realizing that you're pretty good at processing the anger, but the anger is still there. Well, now we're talking about ancestral. Now we're talking about, oh, this anger is my dad's. That is either being triggered when I have a chat with him, or I'm actually picking up from him. That now I have the choice to process. So either way here, whether it's yours or your down your father line or mother line, you can process it for them, which is so powerful, right? You can either make sure it doesn't impact you if they pass it on in this time frame, or if it's like a trauma response, if it's a limiting belief around anger that they've passed on to you because they haven't healed in them, then now you can heal it inside of you. And through ancestral healing, we heal forwards and backwards. Right, so you're doing some of the healing for them as well. So just something I wanted to point out there around the solar plexus, around anger, and to motivate you to do this kind of work, right? Make these connections. And anger is particularly heavy when we don't release it. So again, if you're having any kind of gut challenges, leaky gut, right? You're having constant stomach pain, you're, diverticulitis, there's something going on in that physiological area. Again, it's not the only element of it, but it's something you need to consider to help with your recovery, help with your healing, process, and bring balance back to this energetic and emotional center. All right, beautiful souls. I'm going to put a pause there. I told you that we would go deep and a lot of stuff would come up. I hope that gave some value. This will be part one of my chakra conversation. What I would love is that if you've enjoyed this chat so far, what I'll get you to do is shoot me a message either on my social at Harrison Ma, Clubhouse, Instagram, Facebook. Send me some feedback. So you can also do that through a review on Apple, on Spotify. Let me know how you received this, right? Because these are the kinds of bonus episodes I'm going to do in the future. And I really want you to get some guidance out of this. If you picked up some things here and you've realized some things going on in your world around this, and you realize you need a bit of help to go deeper, to release some things here, then reach out to me also, right? This is what I do in my coaching. One of the things is this whole chakra conversation. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because I think it's so powerful, especially if we can use it as a healing modality. So please feel free to reach out to me if you want a little bit of help. But stay tuned for part 2, where I'll be talking about the heart chakra, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. And we'll be completing this first little bonus series here and connecting you back into that cosmic love antenna. I'm wishing you a beautiful morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. This has been another regular episode of the Cosmic Love Antenna. I'm your host, Harrison, here with you. And I'm out. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Cosmic Love Antenna podcast. We hope you enjoyed. Be sure to follow Harrison on Instagram, Twitter, and Clubhouse at Harrison Ma. That's Harrison, MEAGHER.
Electric acid.